I'd like to share an incredible story of four dogs who lived with a man in the outskirts of a busy city. The man loved his dogs and took very good care of them. Unfortunately, as the years passed by, the man developed heart complications. During the days when the man laid on his deathbed, the dogs would curl next to their master to give him companionship despite the hunger they were experiencing, having gone for days without food. One day, with the dogs lying next to him, the man gave his last breath. Soon after, his children took over the ownership of the father's properties and disowned the dogs. The four dogs were left homeless and dependent on leftover meals from the nearby hotels and households. They scrambled for the little they could get from the trash and sometimes went for 2 to 3 days without any luck of getting food. One day, a kind lady named Mumbi relocated to the estate where the dogs had called home. She would see these dogs every day on her way to work, and the desperation in the dog's eye got her attention. At this time, the dogs had lost so much weight and had developed fears from the constant harassment by the city dwellers. Upon inquiring about the story of the dogs from the neighbors, the lady sympathized with the situation. Being an animal lover, she volunteered to get help in whichever small way she could. She started using her little savings to buy leftover food from local hotels and butcheries. One day on her way to work, she noticed that one of the old male dogs was lying beside the road bleeding from injuries. It wasn't even clear if the dog was still breathing, but after taking a closer look, she could see his weak pulses. His state was deplorable. Apparently, he had been attacked by other male dogs in the previous night in an attempt to take over the territory, which is a normal dog behavior. She immediately called a local animal shelter who promptly responded to her distress call. That night, Mombi couldn't rest. She kept wondering and hoping that the dog would recover. The following morning, she called the animal shelter and the words from the veterinary calmed her down. He said, "I've never seen a dog which was so willing to fight for its life. I'm very hopeful it will recover." After a couple of days, Mombi visited the shelter, and having seen her, the dog wagged his tail and the kennel assistant opened the cage to let him out. The dog was so excited to be with Mombi. Mombi will visit the animal shelter every weekend to check on the recovery progress. Luckily, one day, a family visited the shelter and spotted the dog and decided to adopt her. How lucky he was to move to a caring home. As the months went by, one of the remaining dogs fell sick. The neighbors alerted Mombi, who contacted the animal shelter for rescue. Having volunteered at the animal shelter in her earlier years, she had built close contacts with the staff who always responded to her distress calls. Weeks later, the dog made a full recovery, and just like the other dog, she was privileged to get a safe home through the adoption program. One day, on a cold Sunday morning, one of the remaining two dogs was hit by a speeding vehicle while crossing the road in search of food. He died on the spot. However, something amazing happened. The local vendors picked the remains of the dog and mobilized the neighbors for a good send-off. They buried the dog in an open space within the estate and built a small temporary shelter for the remaining dog. They attributed the kind gesture to the lessons learned over the period from watching Mumbi take care of the dogs. Mumbi could now afford to feed the remaining dog on a daily basis. There was only one problem. The dog used to give birth almost every year to a litter of cubs. At most times, only 1 to 2 cubs will survive. Through Mumbi's help, they will be adopted by local residents to offer security to their households. Mumbi requested the same local shelter to neuter the dog. Due to the limited space at the shelter, it was brought back to the estate after full recovery. Mumbi has since relocated to another estate, but the 15-year-old dog, now nicknamed Mumbi, still roams the street of the estate, but this time with no more harassment from the neighbors, and enjoys regular treats from vendors. The story is a good example of how we can promote animal welfare from our small good acts. It takes one person to touch the lives of animals and nurture positive attitudes towards animals.